Goedemiddag. Good afternoon. Any non-Dutch speaking people in the room? Can you understand Dutch or really better in English? Better in English. So for everybody else, any non-English speaking people? Good. So we can do it in English. Welcome. I believe that it's time to start the presentation for this afternoon. As you have seen, Zero Trust, and we have made it a little bit of a match between SSE and SASE. But let's see if we can really make it a match. We are here at Cybersec, so welcome again. We are from Watchmen, and we will shortly introduce ourselves.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Watchmen. I've been a cybersecurity architect for over 10 years now. I was the former lead Zero Trust officer at the Dutch Chamber of Commerce, and I'm currently a network security architect at the Dutch police. Marco?
Yeah. So Marco Carstens. I am currently in the role of solution architect at the Sociale Verzekeringsbank. And next to that, I'm also one of the principal architects at Watchmen. I have been previously working at Blue Coat and the last 5.5 years at Zscaler. And I joined Watchmen because I really embrace the Zero Trust principles that Zscaler was bringing. And I didn't find any company with the same knowledge, expertise as Watchmen. So that's why I joined about 1.5 years ago Watchmen.
So yeah, I mean that 1.5 years ago was actually in the beginning, because Watchmen isn't actually this old. As you can see here, we started in 2021. And yeah, we had a quite interesting journey. And you can see some of the customers: police, Chamber of Commerce, Ministry of Defense. And here you can see our growth, right? We really started to make a name in the industry, mainly among the engineers, that we were doing something completely different. And during the project that we did at all the customers, we also started to know a lot of the vendors. So we are a pure consultancy firm. We only do consultancy. We don't sell any licenses or whatsoever. So building a relationship with a vendor then is always a little bit weird, because yeah, you don't sell anything, but you still want to have access to the resources, and you still want to gain knowledge. In our case, it's not that hard if you actually have people who worked at Zscaler or Netscope working for you, because then you really have like the insider knowledge, right? So this is a little bit of a head start that we have at Watchmen. But currently we're over 50 engineers, 25 customers.
Yeah.
And we're fastly growing. We've become FD Gezelle this year, so we're one of the fastest growing companies in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I think that it's nice that we have done a few of these technical sessions for customers around mainly the Zero Trust subject, and yeah, I think that's also interesting that we have that relationship with those vendors. The customers, you have seen a few of the logos, but it's more. Yeah, let's do a little introduction on who knows what is Zero Trust. Yeah, Zero Trust, yeah. So
I would expect
probably
everybody's hand, by the way.
yeah.
Zero Trust is really like common nowadays, but good that we have this slide then, I guess.
Yeah, but it's also like everybody has a different opinion about what is Zero Trust, what is not Zero Trust. So what is the real statement of where does it come from?
Well, like, let's first see what is Zero Trust exactly, and in this context, it's basically a security model that enforces continuous trust, and that assumes no implicit trust. So this is a big departure how we did network security the last like 30 years. The whole idea that like the NORA, for example, where you have like trusted zones, you really let go of that idea, and every traffic flow is being handled in the same way, and that is as if it is an unknown flow. This philosophy or this idea was really introduced by John Kindervag when he was working at Forrester. Like he's a legend in cybersecurity. I believe he later on became the CTO of Palo Alto, and I think he works at Illumino nowadays. But Zero Trust really took off when NIST made a special publication with a framework how to implement Zero Trust as an organization. So in like 10 years for like to get like widespread knowledge on, okay, these concepts sound interesting, but how can you actually use them? And when this was published, it really took off. Like all the vendors, all the cybersecurity institutions, they really started to advise that everyone should go in this direction. And yeah, here's a small illustration that like how this should look like from an IT infrastructure perspective. So you have the source, which could be a client or it could be a device that wants to create a traffic flow, and that flow is never trusted and is always verified. So ideally you would want to have like an ID verification in place or some kind of certificate to verify the identity of the source, and while you do that you can implement security, like continuous security inspections, so that there is no longer like a separate zone which trusted traffic can roam freely in before it can even reach a destination. This also means that if your destination is like an application or whatever, that's no longer internet facing or like public facing. So the whole idea with this is that, I mean, you cannot do a port scan anymore or an IP scan. This is a completely different way of doing security. And yeah, you could ask yourself, why does this matter now, right? Because this idea was already like 10 years old. Why is this so present all of a sudden? And that is really because we changed the way we work in organizations. Like the way we do our jobs has completely changed. Like there are two like major factors here. The whole cloud transformation journey, like all the services are being like introduced as a service. This is something that all the major organizations follow, because the whole idea is, yeah, stick to your core business. Why do you want to manage your own IT stack if you can just hire that as a service? That's something you see everywhere. And also the modern way of working, like especially with COVID, nowadays you work from everywhere, and you work like it's completely different. When you had the traditional model, like it was a little bit like a castle, all the trusted data was inside the castle, and when you wanted to access that data, you went through the front door, through the
moat.
The moats indeed, and then you did your work there. But nowadays, like that's like an exception, because you should access your data and your applications everywhere.
I think this is something that most of you would agree with, and mainly already doing some cloud transformation, or really not really focusing anymore at the castle mode infrastructure. So I think that the reason why to implement Zero Trust is this root cause. Can you continue on to the next one?
So Zero trust is like a term well known in the industry now, but there is a newer term, SSE, the Security Service Edge. That is something that is like only been introduced for like actually 3 years, I believe. We will see it in a moment. This is a term coined by Gartner, actually in the same year Watchmen was founded. And SSE is a collection of integrated cloud security capabilities. And that facilitates safe access to applications. So a set of applications that facilitates zero trust.
I think the main focus there is really about cloud transformation, adopting cloud, adopting SaaS applications, and there's a big difference there.
So something that is really an interesting statement is the one that you see on the screen here. According to Gartner, 2026, 85% of the organizations that want to implement security for their SaaS or private applications will do that using SSE. This is like a major statement, because once you realize what SSE actually does and like what products it is, this is like a massive shift. And this also makes you realize, okay, all the major vendors that offer some kind of network security capability should be in on this, because like this statement is pretty insane for a technology that is so new that it will have such a major reach. So if we actually look at what is exactly the components that typically are seen as an SSE, and yeah, you see them here on the screen. So zero trust network access basically means giving access to your applications using the zero trust principles. This is the most lateral sense, like what you just saw in the slide, what explains what zero trust is. A secure web gateway. This is actually like an old technology. This is something that is being used for many years, but this was always seen as a path to the outside. If you want to like have access from your castle to something outside, you would go to this, right? This is some like a bridge to the outside. But nowadays, this is completely different, because if you're no longer inside the castle, you need to have this same functionality, even if you're working at home. So this is something that is a very important functionality. And yeah, the remote browser isolation one is interesting. This is basically an addition to a secure web gateway, which you can completely isolate the code that is running on your own system. So this is a bit technical, but yeah, it's basically an extension. Maybe you can do the other ones now?
Yeah, definitely. I find this one very interesting, firewall as a service, because there's a lot of discussion on if this is really a capability that is coming from going to the cloud, where all traffic almost is HTTPS. But we have seen recently that in SSE also non-standard ports, non-web ports, non-web protocols are also important to cover. And I think that the firewall as a service is a real big addition to the scope of SSE components that not all vendors include in their solutions. I think DLP is a point where when I was working with Blue Coat Symantec, you saw that DLP was only for the few selective companies, and with cloud and all the capabilities in native cloud, you see that DLP becomes more attractive to really look at the data side. So I think most important pieces there. Cloud security access broker, I think most of you have already done something with that, I hope, for shadow IT stuff.
So now, what is SASE then? Because, I mean, SASE is actually an older term, the Secure Access Service Edge. But yeah, many people like associate the functionalities that we just mentioned as, hey, that's a SASE functionality. So if you look at, Gartner also introduced this term. What is basically, like what is SASE is it's a combination of wide area networking and network security services in a single cloud-delivered model. So the statement by Gartner is that by 2027, 65% of all new SD-WAN purchases will be part of a SASE offering. That's also something very interesting to think about, because these two technologies, SSE and SASE, they will actually dominate the market, right? It will be an exception if you see an environment that hasn't have any of those any of these two abilities. So, what is SASE? Like, what are the components? So, this is basically all the SSE functionalities, including the WAN technologies. And I think the most prominent is the SD-WAN technology, because that is the one. So WAN is something that is been present in networking for like 20, 30 years. If you want to connect your branches and your locations together, you will have a separate network. Usually this is something you would run on an MPLS, but nowadays, like, these technologies are becoming legacy, and there is actually like a newer form of to implement the same technology, and that's basically being done in an overlay. And that's basically what SD-WAN is.
And still, I think there are some components there, maybe wide area network optimization for specific use cases, path selection, if you have still the old MPLS circuits or some other lease lines options. So there's still a reason to have it, but you see a decline there. I'm just interested if there's anyone who has implemented SD-WAN from a project, or that is considering SD-WAN, or really considering SASE. So anyone has an SD-WAN deployment that is recent, like 2 years, 3 years old? Yeah.
I guess nobody wants to talk about it.
No, that's always difficult. Huh?
So now we know this. If you then see the complete picture, you basically see, okay, so these are all the WAN components, and these are all the SSE components, and if you use them together, it's actually SASE. But if you would only use the security components, you would qualify as using an SSE. This is basically the difference. But
it's a matching between those two. But there is a big statement there. Huh? It has to be SSE or SASE. It has to be one vendor.
Yes, and now we reach into the terminology, of course, because this is a Gartner coined term, and Gartner states, yeah, it's an SSE if it's from a single vendor. So what you see often is like large corporations, they already have some kind of one technology, and then they later like implement an SSE, but they actually have one technology. They actually have all these features running, and they use SSE, but yeah, they don't qualify as, we have a SASE solution. But yeah, this is like it's a terminology thing, right?
Yeah, you have done quite some investigation on those reports from Gartner. Did you see a difference in that statement? What is considered SASE compared to like the 2021 or 2022 statements and the recent ones where they say it has to be single vendor? Because SASE was earlier with different players in the Magic Quadrant.
Yeah. So like this is an interesting thing, right? If we're now we know the terminology. If we actually look at the players in the market, right, the solutions that everyone is looking at. What does every major customer do? They look at the Magic Quadrants, right? And you would expect, there is maybe a single Magic Quadrant that highlights the complete industry. But to make it like confusing or interesting, it's like a matter of opinion, there are actually two separate Magic Quadrants, one for SSE and one for SASE. So if you have been in the industry for some time, you would know that if we're talking about these types of technologies, Zscaler and Netscope are really the
leaders,
the leading vendors in our capability and technological sense. And also, if you look at the Dutch market, most of the major Dutch corporations, they choose Zscaler, right? Zscaler is really dominant in the Dutch market. That's very interesting because technologically wise, Netscope is really like similar qua features. There is not, like if you pure look at it from a technical perspective, there isn't much difference. There are some like small details, but it's interesting to see that Zscaler is really dominant in the Dutch market. If you also look at this slide, you also see that from all the legacy vendors, if I can use this term, so Zscaler and Netscope, they are cloud native, right? They were born in the cloud. They designed their complete product portfolio based on the zero trust idea, on like cloud native. But as you saw the statement from Gartner, this will dominate the complete market. So all the legacy vendors, they need to invest in this because this is the future. From the legacy vendors, I think if you look at the Magic Quadrant, Palo Alto is like doing it the best, right? They are investing heavily in their Prisma Access product, and they reached a double leader status in both of the Magic Quadrants. And there are actually some big Dutch customers who are switching to Prisma Access. So this is something you actually see at the Dutch market. But yeah, what of course is interesting if you closely look at this, is that Cisco, for example, like that is all my certifications and stuff. Like I have a big Cisco background. Cisco is the market leader in networking, and yeah, it's weird that they are like not present in the SSE, right? And you saw the statement from Gartner. That's weird. And if so, what does Gartner say specifically about Cisco not being in there? Well, they just don't have enough numbers of customers that are actually using their SSE product. Sure, you could make the argument, deadline date, but this is also something that you actually see in the market, right? We did loads of proof of concepts comparing Cisco's offering against Zscaler, Netscope, Palo Alto. And the reason Cisco is always included in that kind of comparisons is because most of the customers, they have an existing relationship with Cisco. So they always want Cisco to be included. But yeah, and all the proof of concepts that we ever did, they always fell short if you really look at requirements. Yep. They haven't invested enough, they haven't moved fast enough. And yeah, this is something that Gartner actually says here. And if Cisco will not move fast, they will probably end up like Nokia. But I mean, if anyone has seen the agenda of the current Cisco Live, they are going to focus heavily on SSE, right? Cisco is all about SSE, starting like this year or next year. So another interesting thing, if people were actually like paying closely attention, Zscaler is being seen as a leader, and Zscaler is really dominant in all the previous Magic Quadrants as well. Like if we talk about these are quite new. Before this, you had like Magic Quadrants about secure web gateways. Zscaler has been a leader for like 7 years. And it's very interesting to see why are they not on the SASE one. And so if you look at what Gartner says about that, they say, they have relevant technology and investing, but yeah, they don't have the product criteria to be included. So if you then look at this, to come back to your previous question, what exactly is a SASE then in the eyes of Gartner? And they have a long list of requirements, like must-have capabilities, and they're all very similar, right? You need to have zero trust, you need to have secure web gate and that kind of functionality. But the only real differentiator is this line here. Gartner says a must-have capability is that you should have a physical branch appliance that has like physical WAN interfaces. So that's like an interesting thing to say.
Especially,
I mean, the thing is,
we haven't seen them in real life yet.
The thing is, I actually was a speaker at Zenit Live, that is Zscaler's Cisco Live event. I was there on stage, actually presenting this product from Zscaler, right? So it's interesting to me that, okay, Zscaler actually has a physical box that actually does this, but I guess they didn't meet the deadline in time.
Or the deadline or the number of deployments, that can also be the case.
But this is very interesting, because if you're not aware, you think, okay, Zscaler is not a SASE vendor. Well, they actually are, right? They actually have this capability. So this is something very interesting to take notice of. If you only look at Magic Quadrants, right? You should really look at these details and how exactly did the vendor reach that spot, and what type of product did they or didn't they have at the time that the deadline was. That's like an interesting point.
It's always difficult, especially this one I think is most interesting, because I don't know Kato networks that well, but I know that they have been working quite well in maybe not the biggest enterprises, but they had a pretty good network. They have reasonable security features. And they did appear in the SASE Magic Quadrant, I believe, from day one, because they were like the only vendor that basically had all the features required. They came from the SD-WAN side. They implemented security features. But yeah, you have to be careful to make a list of, okay, this is feature A, B, C, and I do have the security features. It's a tricky one.
I mean, this is actually really interesting, because we just like saw what the SASE is, right? How can you be a SASE vendor but not be recognized as a SSE vendor? That makes no sense, really, right?
Maybe because you cannot operate the box without having the SD-WAN.
Yeah, but that's not a requirement in the Magic Quadrant. So this is this is like very interesting if you look at this, and maybe it has something to do by. Gartner doesn't say anything about this, why Kato isn't there, by the way. But the Kato founder actually says something about this. And I mean, if you're in this space, like I wouldn't bash Gartner, right? That's probably not a smart thing to do if you're like the founder of a vendor. But this is an interesting statement that he made. And this would maybe explain somehow why he isn't in the Magic Quadrant. But it even gets weirder, because if you look at the Magic Quadrant for SD-WAN, there was also a Magic Quadrant for that, you realize, hey, Kato isn't even in the SD-WAN Magic Quadrant. How is that possible? So it's not present in SD-WAN and it's not present in SSE, but somehow it is in the SASE Magic Quadrant. So this is like, yeah, this is we're getting into the realm of, okay, this is getting weird here. And yeah, if we want to notice weird stuff here, Broadcom is in the SSE market and is in the SD-WAN market, but is not recognized as SASE. So this is like very interesting.
No single.
I mean, the thing is, like, people who are in the know, you know, Broadcom bought Blue Coat Symantec, so that's why they are in SSE, by the way, and they bought VMware, that's why they are in SD-WAN. But Gartner doesn't recognize them as a single vendor because they have two separate UIs for that. Yeah. So, but this is stuff, if you look at Magic Quadrants, right, that you really need to know, okay, this is how they are established, this is how Gartner works.
So since we cannot go into many details, I think we cannot give any examples at the moment because we are out of time. And I think it's more important to hear if there's any questions you have at the moment that you would like have to answer us for you.
Why is Microsoft not included in the Magic Quadrant?
Yeah, that's a very good one. Why is Microsoft not included? Did you see Microsoft in any of the Magic Quadrants?
Yes, it is actually mentioned. So Microsoft, this is how do you say it, a public secret. Microsoft wanted to buy Zscaler for a long time, right? And Zscaler refused. What they basically did is looked a little bit like Le Mans, Ford versus Ferrari. They basically copied the complete product suite that Zscaler has, and like what SSE is, and they called that product Entra Internet Access and Entra Private Access. But this product is really new. I highly doubt, I don't know it by head, but they are definitely in the Magic Quadrant, and then there will be a statement that the product didn't have the required amount of users to be recognized as a SSE vendor or an SD1 vendor, and also because the physical box requirement, that's also a thing, because Microsoft doesn't make physical boxes themselves, so they will need to have like some kind of partnership to build this. But they are definitely coming because they have they have the infrastructure, and if you have the infrastructure, you just need to build the services on top.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my question is, what is the conclusion regarding the Magic Quadrant? Because you say, for example, Cisco is on the SASE but not on the SSE, and other are on the SD1 but not on the SASE.
Yeah.
So does it mean that we need to be careful with the Magic
Quadrant? I think that you have to be very careful on selecting a product, and especially just selecting the products that are in the Magic Quadrant of a specific area. Since there is so little difference between SSE with SD-WAN or SSE with some functionality of SD-WAN, and having a pure SSE provider that may be not fitting exactly what your requirements are. So, and I think that single vendor, is your team that is operating the security also the person or the team that is operating the SD-WAN solution? Maybe it's two teams, and there doesn't need to be a single solution for that offering. And you have to really look at the details of your requirements and see what's fitting best in your organization and your current, maybe already your current product suite.
Yeah, so it really depends on the use case. That's really the answer. And so we had some use cases here, but we didn't have time to explain them. But the big question, of course, is, does your organization need some kind of one technology? Like, is the SD1 still relevant? So if your organization would have like mainly user traffic, user-generated traffic, you could make the argument, what's the point of all those one technologies? Because if you just need a local breakout or an internet connection, there is no point in having a one technology anymore. So you don't need a SASE solution, you only need a SSE solution. But if like you have a lot of machine-to-machine traffic, you have a lot of branches, then you would need to have some kind of one in order to detect that type of traffic, because you cannot just install an agent on a machine that doesn't support that agent. That's really the answer. I hope we answered that correctly.
Yeah, I have to pick the microphone from him because we are running out of time, and we can talk forever, and I hope that there was some interest by you guys maybe to visit our booth. We are here just out of the hall. I forgot the number, well, I don't know the number, but we are there with the Watchmen stand, so please be welcome if you want to know more about SD-WAN or about SSE or maybe about SASE, and we look forward to meeting you in the future. Thank you.